Welcome, Reds, the 100% United podcast. I'm your host, TC, and here's my co-host, Scott. Hello, mate.
Hello, TC. Hello, Reds.
So, a bitterly disappointing weekend for Manchester United. After the ecstasy of Paris, we crashed to a 2-0 defeat at the Emirates. We've got to keep going. Sunday was a body blow, but nothing close to a knockout blow. We march on United. Scott, I know you're pretty low yesterday. How are you feeling today, pal?
Well, looking at the bigger picture, TC, I think we're much better than we thought we were going to be this time a few months ago. Disappointed, but not dead and buried by any means.
Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of performance, I think after obviously a very, very wild night in Paris, I thought the boys put in a decent performance and we created loads of chances. We certainly weren't overrun. It was just one of those days it threw in my eyes.
Yeah, there are a few wasted opportunities, weren't there? I thought we could have been a little bit more clinical. And the game could have been so different. If a couple of things went our way, it could have been much different.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, as Ollie always says, it's about taking chances in football. And we did have the chances to take. And unfortunately, on the day, it was guys who have really, really looked after us in the last few weeks, like Lukaku and Rashford, who didn't take the chances. So we need to give them a bit of slack because they have been the ones who have led us through this time. We've had quite a lot of injuries as well.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that he said that we actually played better yesterday than we did when we beat them 3-1 in the Cup a couple of months ago. When you said it in our last podcast that the ecstasy of Wednesday night emotionally drains the players after the game, I was wondering what you were meaning, but I completely agree with it now.
Yeah, I mean, we started quite deep, didn't we? We started sort of three at the back. Ashley Young playing on the right of the three. So it was quite a defensive formation. Realistically, we did sit. Arsenal had a lot of the play in the sort of first 5 minutes, but we still looked comfortable. It didn't look like we were sort of submitting to Arsenal at all. It looked like we were just feeling our way into the game, trying to silence the crowd like Ferg used to like to do against the bigger teams. And we did have chances too after that. I mean, the first 10 minutes, we were under the cosh a little bit. But we certainly had the best chance on 9 minutes when Pogba released Luke Shaw down the line and then Lukaku hit the bar when really should have scored, Scott.
Yeah, it's frustrating when you've seen him convert more difficult chances in the last few weeks than that one was. And I think it actually went to his head a little bit. It lost him a little bit of confidence, but it was frustrating to see. But at the end of the day, he's done so well the last few weeks. It's hard to dig him out over that chance, and it wouldn't have meant so much if they didn't capitalise from it a couple of minutes later.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it was a gilt-edged chance, and then we also had another chance straight after when Pogba got the rebound, squared it to Fred. He couldn't quite make it, and as you say, 3 minutes later, Xhaka lined up from about 25 yards maybe, and very unlike Dave to let that in. What happened there, mate?
I think it's actually exactly what you were saying yesterday, that, he's been training with the Champions League balls all week, and the Premier League ball and Champions League ball are a little bit different, have certain different dimensional and weight differences between them. And the Premier League ball maybe flies a little bit different.
It definitely does, yeah. I mean, they're two very different balls. Something that people don't really generally mention. Even with that, you expect Dave to save it. It was nowhere near the corner. And it was very unlike Dave. What I will say is if you put that goal in a collection, if say there was a goalkeeper who was match fixing, and you put that goal in the collection of 10 goals that he had let in on purpose, it wouldn't look out of place. It really wouldn't. I mean, when you watch...
You mean if Grobbelaar had conceded that back in the 80s? Yeah, I know what you mean.
Chucked it in again.
Yeah.
Because if you watch, the ball's moving, and it actually starts moving that way, and then Dave takes the step. I know it's in slow motion, so it deceives our eyes. Dave's looking at it in real time. We're looking at it in slow mo, but it really does look like a match fix goal, doesn't it? It really does.
Well, it's not going to do his contract chances any better, is it?
Well, maybe they'll give him a contract. Maybe they'll smooth that out because his form's been a bit shaky recently, hasn't it? I mean, you certainly wouldn't expect him to let in that Valerie shot.
Mm-hmm.
You certainly wouldn't expect him to let in that Xhaka shot at all yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say, put it this way, in the last sort of 5 seasons, this is probably his weakest season so far.
Yeah, I'd probably have to agree with you there. But I think, as we said a couple episodes ago, he is the catalyst of his own downfall sometimes. He puts in such unbelievable performances, pulls off some unbelievable saves that when he doesn't do it every time, it makes him look even worse than he actually is.
Yeah, setting his own standards, and then he has to sort of keep
exactly.
them. Exactly. And let's not be mistaken here, I'm not digging out Dave. we just got to say what we see. It was a goalkeeping error. It wasn't a good display by Dave. He'll be back, I know that for sure, but it was a real shame that he made a mistake at that time.
Yeah, and I think what you were saying was absolutely right a minute ago, that there were huge spaces all around the pitch, and I thought we played him off the park in the cup a few months ago. That it was just painful to watch us not play to the level that we know we can play.
Yeah, and just one more thing about Dave, just a point. Of course, now we're conceding far fewer shots on our goal than we have for the Mourinho years, certainly the Van Gaal years and the Moyes years too. So we're conceding far less shots, and maybe it's just an adjustment Dave has to make. His form for Spain hasn't been so great, and probably they're quite defensively sound. Don't concede too many shots either. Maybe it's just growing pains of Dave getting used to being in a team that actually doesn't concede so many shots, so he's not always active. Is that a fair point?
I'm not sure. I see where you're going with that, but I've always, I know you hate this this description of a quality of a goalkeeper, but I find him to be such a great shot stopper that the fewer shots that he comes up against, I feel like he should still be saving them. And I feel like if Xhaka had taken that shot a couple of years ago, then Dave would have saved it no problem.
Yeah, and anyway, let's not flog a dead horse. Dave's absolutely fantastic, best goalkeeper in the world, and I believe he'll stay here for years to come. So, look, it's one error. We'll take it. It's fine. We'll take it on the chin. Shortly after, we had another chance. Fred hit the post. Bit of a tame shot. Leno probably had it covered. I thought Pogba started pretty well. He was pretty energetic, creating chances, trying to prove his worth after obviously missing Wednesday. But still, it seemed like we were trying to force the play a little bit. It seemed like we weren't totally comfortable and just trying to force our way back in after conceding.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. I think that you could tell that Matic hadn't played the last couple of games. He was maybe a little bit behind the pace, but I think that how well Scott McTominay played the last couple of games, we were sort of used to a different style of play right there. I actually thought Fred was pretty good. I thought that the shot was a bit of I think he was trying to place it instead of power it, but at least he was much better than the Fred we were seeing earlier on in the season. He broke up quite a lot of their play. His passes were simple and short, but pretty effective. I thought he actually had a pretty good game defensively in that middle of the park.
Yeah, I've been impressed with Fred's improvement. What I will say is that I have noticed a difference between Fred's output when he's not playing alongside Matic and when he is playing alongside Matic. I've got a feeling that Fred and Matic doesn't work. There's something about it, and maybe it's because Matic takes a while releasing the ball and Fred likes the ball a little bit quicker out of there. But I have noticed in his performances, obviously he's shone since Matic got injured, right? And now Matic was back. Fred was still good yesterday, but I did think he's gained a lot of confidence after Wednesday, and he's taking his level up. He's going to make a few more mistakes, but I do see a little thing there with Matic. I'm not sure those two are a match made in heaven going forward.
No, I think that they both want to occupy that left side of the defensive too, given they're both left-footed. I think that him and McTominay maybe a bit more of a natural combination, and I think that if anything, McTominay does the dirty work that Fred doesn't necessarily want to do a little bit better than Matic does.
Yeah.
I think Matic is more of a deep-lying playmaker than defensive midfielder that McTominay is, and that Fred plays better alongside.
Yeah, I think so. And we're saying that United weren't great, but the first half hour, there's no doubt about it. We had the best two chances by absolutely far. Rashford had his chance from Lukaku's ball. He really should have scored. We've already discussed that Lukaku should have scored. So we did have the real two golden chances the first half hour, even though we weren't at our best. So that's another positive, I must say.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you there.
And we had, again, Lukaku burster on the 36th minute, Rasha setting him up again. Really good recovery save from Leno. But what I will say, in that first 40 minutes, Arsenal had 9 shots, we had 10. They had 1 shot on target, we had 2 on target. So through my eyes, we weren't playing so well, and Arsenal playing sort of above themselves. Stats-wise, we're still putting the numbers up there. We're still creating chances. It just wasn't going in for us, was it?
I think that's a really fair point. I think it was easy to see how mentally fatigued we were. Usually you can spot a team being physically fatigued, but I think that you could really see that there were just a couple of moments where the passes weren't quite there, and we were just maybe a yard or half a yard behind the pace of the game at times.
Yeah, and I know one of your absolute favourites these days, Diogo Dalot, found a bit of space on 43 minutes down the right. Should he have shot or should he have passed it back? He obviously squared it back. We had a couple of chances there, and then Rasha went in, and Xhaka and Rasha came together. Should he have had a dig there?
I think he could have, yeah, but I think it was an absolutely wonderful passage of play to get there.
Oh,
A
it
lovely,
was.
intricate football. Pogba had that beautiful long-range pass with his left foot.
Absolutely gorgeous.
I think it was a really nice little passage of play, and it really deserved a goal.
It did, and to be absolutely fair to Dalot, the option to shoot or pass was pretty much 50-50. It was a fine square back, and he did sort of dummy to shoot. To be honest with you, though, from that angle as a fullback, I'd like to see him having the dig there.
Yeah, it was the same position that Ashley Young found himself at Crystal Palace a couple of weeks ago, and pulling the trigger was beneficial to everyone. So, listen, it's hard to pinpoint exactly why certain things happen, and I thought he was actually great again yesterday, Dalot. I just keep getting surprised by how well advanced he is as a player.
He's fantastic. He really is. And look, I'm not digging him out. The option was there to shoot, but at the same time, the pullback, he's a team player. I like the fact that he's a team player. But when you shoot from that angle, you've got the chance of a rebound, you've got the chance for the goal, obviously. No, it's just an option. I'm not saying it was a mistake, but it was a shame because, again, another massive, massive opening. And half-time came and Arsenal go in 1-0, unbelievably.
It was unbelievable because I think you did say it right, that we did perhaps shade the first half in terms of quality of possession and chances and shots on goal. We missed that clinical edge that we needed, and it could have been so different if Lukaku had taken that chance in the 9th minute, but it wasn't to be.
Yeah, and the great thing is we know we've got a boss now who will be in Lukaku's ear. He won't be slagging him off, but he will be saying, look, you score that chance in the 9th minute and everything's different. And he's the kind of guy who will focus Rashford and focus Lukaku's attention back on saying, look, you've got to take your chances. All very well putting in the shift like they did. Superb performances again. You've got to take your chances as a striker. That's your bread and butter.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there.
So we came out second half, little formation jig again from Ollie, went to 4 at the back. Really fast start. Rasha and Lukaku again came out flying. Much more urgency. And then just 6 minutes into it, Lukaku clean through and really, really should have scored. Rashford again setting him up. Leno, really, really good save, but it was a clean through, 1-on-1. He's got to score again.
I wish he just would have hit it first time and could have just steered it into that corner. The pass already had the pace that the shot needed, right? He didn't need to stop it dead and then shoot again. But I think you have to say it was actually a great save.
Brilliant, absolutely brilliant save. It really was. Mm-hmm. And he made a number of superb saves, actually, Leno. But again, you just expect Lukaku, especially on the form he's in, 6 in 3 to finish.
Yeah, I was amazed with the pass. I couldn't believe the pass managed to get its way through, and it just shows that we've been watching Marcus Rashford for a little over 3 years now, and we know that sometimes he shoots when he should pass, and it was amazing to see him manage to wriggle that ball through when at least I was screaming for him to shoot.
Yeah, it was a beautiful disguise, wasn't it? And actually, we're seeing a lot more of Rasha in terms of an all-round player. I know under Mourinho we had the newspapers and the media in general were trying to say that Rashford should be through the middle and Mourinho's ruining him by not playing him as a striker and all the rest of it, even though England weren't playing him as a striker either. But if you ask the man himself, you ask Marcus Rashford himself which position he wants to play in, he would say, and well, he has said, that I want to play striker, I want to play out wide, I want to play in number 10, I want to be able to play in all the positions for Manchester United. So all that nonsense about him having to play through the middle was all just made up by the media. He's since come out and quashed it. But we are seeing that side of his game. I mean, that, like you say, that ball was outrageous. Absolutely beautiful.
It was, yeah. And I think going back to that point, that in which position he would like to play the most, I would love to see him through the middle because I find he's got that clinical instinct that we need to go through the middle. I think that if that chance on 9 minutes had fallen to him, we might have gone 1-0 up. And if he was on the end of that incredible pass that he wormed through, then again, it could have been a goal.
Yeah, but he's great on the left as well. Just ask Alexander Arnold.
Yeah.
He's a threat from all angles, but 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, I think, with him and Lukaku. I like seeing them both up front together. And on another day, they both take their chances, and we're smiling.
Yeah, I think that they do complement each other well. I think that when Rashford does drop back and look for the ball a bit more, then Lukaku does go up front and play off the last man a bit better. They managed to complement each other with their movements and with their attitudes towards the game.
Yeah, I think so, and I think they're a nice partnership in terms of doesn't seem to be too much ego in there. They're really happy for either Lukaku to lead or Rasha to lead. They're there to support each other, which I really like from a strike partnership. It sort of reminds me of York and Cole a little bit.
Yeah, I just wish that they could get on the end of each other's passes a bit better and to anticipate each other's play a bit better.
Yeah, and maybe that will come. They've only been playing as a two for a few games. I mean, it's not, the formation's changed quite a lot. Ollie likes to jiggle the formation around. And obviously under other managers and under Mourinho, they didn't play as a pair so much. So maybe it's something that will come. Certainly hope so, because they both got the finishes and they both got the ability to set each other up too. So it really should be a match made in heaven.
It should be, yeah. And I think that York and Cole were the ultimate partnership in terms of strikers, and to be compared to those two is a huge compliment in itself.
Yeah, absolutely. And then Rasher, of course, again on 59 minutes, we had a free kick 25 yards out. We had Fred dummy, Pogba dummy, and then Rasher steamed in and absolutely smashed it. And it whistled wide again. Another chance that we didn't make the most of. You really want to be hitting the target there. And then it was more the same. Arsenal pushing. We were still finding openings. I must say, mate, I thought that John Moss, the referee, was all over the shop. I've seen him a few times do this, and what he does is he makes a small bad decision, and he makes another small bad decision, and then he spends the rest of the match evening it up. I don't think he's biased at all. I just think he makes a couple of bad decisions, and everything goes to pot.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because there were a couple of iffy decisions at the beginning of the second half, maybe the first 10, 15 minutes, that I felt he gave us a couple of really 50-50 calls, and he gave us the benefit of the doubt a few times. I thought to myself, God, if we get anything from this game, then that's all we're going to hear, right? Is that, the referee was wearing blue like the rest of the United players. And then it sort of just went completely on its head, right? I don't like to see a referee side with any one team, but I do feel like you're absolutely right. He did just try and even himself up with a few really innocuous, dodgy calls the first 10, 15 minutes that then he let himself down.
I think he did, Scott. And what I will say is, I'm looking at my match notes here. On 65 minutes, I've got United still finding openings, John Moss all over the shop, and then 68 minutes, Fred concedes penalty, really soft, crap decision. That's what I wrote. So
Awful.
So you're talking about 3 minutes. I've seen Moss is going off on one again. And then 3 minutes later, he blooming gives that penalty now.
Yeah, and even Steve Nicol, the most biased scouser of the lot, he even said it wasn't a penalty. So when you've got someone like him saying it wasn't a penalty, it definitely wasn't, right?
It was absolutely abysmal. Let's not. And I know some people have said, you can't complain about penalties because you had a dodgy one in the week. We didn't have a dodgy one in the week. The one in the week was a Stonewall penalty. The guy put his arm out and handballed it. VAR was in play. The ref went to VAR, and it was definitely a penalty. So it wasn't a close call at all. It was definitely a penalty. And the one on Sunday was definitely not a penalty.
No, I agree with that. And it's going back to what you say, right? Like, just because we got a penalty in the week means that they have to get one on the weekend to even itself up. It's ridiculous.
And maybe that was in John Moss's head as well, because these refs are human. That's what people don't mention. The refs are human. They've got all kind of weird thoughts going on, all kind of vendettas and all the rest of it. It was shocking stuff, really, 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 really bad. But we're not a kind of team, and we're not the kind of podcast that's going to blame other things. Look, United lost on Sunday. It was our fault. But if someone gives a crap decision, we're going to say it.
Just going back to that quickly, I thought the linesman was in a much better position to give the decision, and he didn't say it was a penalty. I thought John Moss was a bit behind the play and was shielded by a few players, wasn't able to see it perfectly, and the linesman didn't actually say it was. So it was just a tough one to take. And after his miss on the weekend, I knew he was going to go down the middle. I wish Dave would have heard my screams.
Well, did you see Dave after he let it in? He actually put his hands over his eyes and went mad, because I think he was thinking the same as you, mate. But as a keeper, once you go, you can't go back. And unfortunately, sometimes you bite. But I'm pretty sure he was thinking the same as you. Watch the replay. Dave was absolutely furious.
Yeah, I think if you just stand there in the middle and still let it in, it makes you look even worse. You've sort of got to commit to some side, but sort of want to stay in the middle. But yeah, I knew it. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, it was an absolute nightmare. It really was. So 2-0 down, really. And it was almost curtains a minute later. Lacazette, massive chance. Lindelof losing him, unfortunately. Lindelof didn't have his best game. He did lose his man a couple of times. Again, we were let off, and I thought maybe, just maybe, we're going to do another late show here. But the game started to drift away from us a little bit. And then again, Arsenal on 83 minutes had a massive opening, a Wobie crossing, a Fred brilliantly back to clear again. And then Moss giving everything in the last 10 minutes. Did you notice that? Just blowing for every little niggle, everything he could.
Yeah, I couldn't believe how quickly the last 20, 25 minutes went. I think it was completely different to Paris, right? That it felt like the last half hour went on for an hour. But here it just felt like it. I looked at the clock, it was 70 minutes. Then I looked a minute later and it said 83. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, and it looked like we had the spirit. It looked like we had the passion to push and press. But it looked like we run out of juice there at the end. In the last sort of 10, 15 minutes, the players, the will was there. Look, I can't fault any of the commitment, any of the boys on Sunday. I'm absolutely 100% happy that they put in a top commitment. We just ran out of energy. We just ran out of juice at the end there.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to say out of ideas as well that we were just lacking in a few different departments, and it was just a shame to see.
Yeah, and then we had one last chance, 92nd minute, Rashford, free header, edge of the 6-yard box, straight at Leno again, destroy the match really for the strikers.
Yeah, agree with that.
And then my last note on the game, funnily enough, Scott, I sound like a right old ref basher, don't I? Moss lets the ball through his legs again for the second time in the match, always in the way, and he's always in the way, and the ref who wants to let the ball through his legs that much. You got to say, are you an attention seeker? Are you a guy who wants to give these dodgy decisions and get a bit of attention? Yeah, absolutely awful stuff.
Yeah, and we often say that when United come to town that everyone gives their 110% and it's everyone's cup final when we come to town. And you got to think that it's sort of the same with referees a bit, that they're never going to get as much scrutiny or as much publicity as when they're refereeing a United game, and sometimes they just want to be the centre of attention.
Yeah, I think that's fair. So, mate, we fall 2-0 at the Emirates. Really, really sad stuff. Obviously, the rivalry for Arsenal over the last sort of 20, 25 years has been really strong. We always like going there and pulling their pants down. Unfortunately, we had to take one on the chin this time. Luckily, other matches have been kind to us. Spurs dropped points, Chelsea dropped points as well. Sure, you might say that's an opportunity missed, but it does mean that it's very, very, very tight there from third downwards. So we're still right in the mix. What are you thinking for the running?
I'm still confident about third, mate.
Yeah.
I really am. I think that Arsenal, but they did play well yesterday. They did outplay us certain parts of the game. But
And can I sorry to interject, Scott. They've only lost once at the Emirates in the league this season, and that's to City.
that was the first game of the season, right?
Of course, we beat them in the cup, but their home form is absolutely superb. So that has to be taken into account. Now, in terms of where we stand now,
We did beat them in the cup, right?
that's what I said. So yeah, we beat them. City are the only team to beat them in the league.
I think if you would have asked me a few months ago, would you prefer to beat them in the league or in the cup? I probably would have still said the cup. You can't win trophies for coming fourth.
No, and we're still like you say, you're still in the cup, and therefore we've got the chance now to bounce back on Saturday against Wolves and advance to the semi-finals of the FA Cup. So, but in terms of the running, we have got good news and bad news. I would say Arsenal have obviously got the easier running compared to us. We've got Chelsea and City to compete with, but the good stuff is the next 3 games we play first. So if we win, then we put the pressure back on Arsenal. We all know what Arsenal like with pressure. Not so good.
No, I agree with that, and we all know what it's like to play one of the lesser teams in the last couple of months of the season, right? That they're playing for their lives, they're playing for their Premiership survival, and they up their game hugely. And sometimes when Manchester United are coming to town, especially after Jesse Lingard's just moonwalked all over your stadium, you up your game and you play the hardest game of your career, right? You give 125% as opposed to just 100% or 80% as some players do. But when Cardiff come to town or when you go to Bournemouth, it's a bit different. And when you've just beaten Manchester United 2-0, sometimes the next game, if it is a trip to Cardiff or something, sometimes mentally is a bit of a formality. and it's anything but that. And there's still a lot of points to be won. There's still 8 games to play. There's still 24 points to play for. I don't think they're going to get 24.
No.
And all we've got to do is come back and get 2 off them. I still think we'll be fine, mate. And I still think Spurs have got it to bottle. You know, Spurs go to Liverpool in a few weeks. What are we, 5 points behind Spurs now? 3.
No. 3, yeah.
3 points. I mean, I don't think they're even going to pick up 21 points, let alone 24. I think that if we can finish as strong as we've been playing the last few months, we're going to be fine, mate.
Yeah, and also the landscapes can look a lot different when we next play a game in the league. We've now got, it's 19 days now until our next league game. It's almost 3 weeks. We've got the FA Cup v Wolves on Saturday, obviously. A massive game for us. We win that, our confidence goes back through the roof. Win the FA Cup semi-final. Then it's the international break. You never know in which team's going to pick up injuries, which players are going to go off and sort of their minds drift off elsewhere a little bit. And then we reconvene on the 30th of March with Watford at Old Trafford. Very, very winnable game. We win that. We go back above Arsenal. And then they've got to play the next day. So, like I say, when in my experience of these, I would say title run-ins, but this is a fourth place run-in. It's not my usual thing. But when there's so few points in it, it's easy to say, oh, we've blown it. But actually, all it takes is one mistake from Arsenal or Spurs, and we're back in it, back above them.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's not forget that we can also qualify for the Champions League next year by winning it. So let's try and do that.
Yes, Scott, and actually that's a point I wanted to make. These people who talk about, we've got to qualify for the Champions League, we've got to qualify for the Champions League. And some people sort of say, oh, well, you should focus on the league rather than the cups to qualify for the Champions League. But it seems mental to me, because if you're already in the Champions League, then surely you should be trying to get as far in the Champions League as possible, because that's the point you're in it in the first place.
Absolutely. We're only in it to win it, right?
Exactly. So it seems like sort of weird kind of logic. And also, we made an extra 12 million, didn't we, by beating PSG? We'll make an extra 12 by going through again. If you're worried about the money we might lose from not getting in the Champions League next season, well, that's already 12 out of the 30 that we've saved. So yeah, we're still in it. We're still going to qualify for the Champions League anyway, so don't you worry about that. And let's get a bit of perspective here, because that's the first time we've lost in the league since the 16th of December. That's almost 3 months. It's Jose's last game in charge, so let's not blooming throw our toys out the pram like I've seen some people do. That's an unbelievable record. We're always going to lose in the end, weren't we?
Absolutely. And I think that if you would have said on the 17th of December, listen, you can win or draw your next 13 games, but you'll lose at Arsenal, would you still take that? Everybody would have, right?
You would have bitten their arm, their shoulder, their neck. You would have bitten everything off. I mean, for that, do you think how low we were on the 16th? Well, I know how low you were on the 16th of December, Scott. Think how low we
Christmas
were.
was miserable.
But let's get a bit of perspective. I know we all love United. We're all so in it that when we lose, yeah, it does hurt us. But a bit of perspective here. We've lost 2 games in all competitions since the 16th of December. One against PSG, didn't matter anyway. We went through. And this one against Arsenal, this won't matter either, because we'll still qualify for the Champions League.
Yeah, it's still a great time to be a United fan, TC, and I'm just enjoying the ride.
Yeah, and I've got a few plus points that I definitely took out of the game. Top of the list has got to be Mason Greenwood. Champions League debut on Wednesday, Premier League debut on Sunday. And actually, what an experience for the guy. Comes on, experiences that massive high in Paris, gets to be in the dressing room with the lads, get to feel that energy, get to feel what it's like to take on one of the giants of Europe, win and progress. And then on Sunday, he has the opposite feeling, the feeling of when maybe we I wouldn't say let ourselves down, but we'll feel like we've let ourselves down, and the dressing room would have been very low, and he would have got that side of it, that experience as well. So for a lad of 17 years old, experiencing that high on Wednesday, that low on Sunday, I would say that's a massively positive experience for him.
Yeah, and you know what I liked is that he came on we were 2-0 down, desperate for something, and he was begging for the ball. Every time he got on it, he was positive and always looking for something. And it would have been easy for him to just come on and sit on that right wing and be lost, right, and just be forgotten about. But he was always looking for the ball, looking for chances, and I'm really excited about his future and his progression. And I'm sure he's back at school today, which is it's great to see, right?
Incredible stuff. It really is. And we also had a great bit of news with Anthony Martial returning. He looked very sharp, mate. That's going to be a massive plus point for the running, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I just hope that we can keep him as fit as he needs to be. These muscle strains, sometimes you bring a player back too quickly, and it happens again, as we saw with Jesse against Liverpool.
Yeah.
So I think the international break will do him well as well to get a couple more weeks of recuperation under his belt. It was great to see, even though he maybe was a little bit behind the speed of play yesterday, I think it was good to see Matic back. Even if it is at the expense of McTominay, who I thought was fantastic the last few games. But he's a great influence to have around the dressing room and around the squad in general, because he's at least played in these bigger games and won things in the past. I know he always likes a trip to Wembley. So let's hope we can keep him fit for the rest of the season.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And just one more point about the Arsenal game. We know now that one of the Arsenal fans has been charged with assaulting Chris Smalling after he came onto the pitch. Really crazy stuff from the guy. Obviously, we had the events up in the second City derby with Villa against Birmingham. A guy landing a sucker punch on Jack Grealish from behind. And then this mad Arsenal fans run on the pitch. He's only given Smalling a little shove. But after events earlier in the day, that's just mad stuff.
It is worrying to see as well, isn't it? Because you watch replays of games in the 80s and early 90s and what have you, and you see those huge fences up near the field, and you just think, God, I'm so glad those aren't still up, right? But I think that we might be going down the road that those need to be erected again.
I know, and then obviously that opens up other problems in terms of fan safety. But you just can't have fans running on the pitch. And I mean, they get annoyed at you running on the pitch to celebrate, let alone running on the pitch to start roughing people up.
I just couldn't believe that we haven't seen it for so long, and then we see it twice in a day. And it's not as though we haven't seen people sometimes just like to run on the pitch and take the clothes off and what have you, and have a little run around. But to actually square up to a player and square up to a player like Chris Smalling. It's not as though they're coming on the pitch and squaring up to Fred or someone a bit diminutive. That's the square up to Chris Smalling.
That's the part of it I don't like, Scott, you see, because it's they're squaring up to him knowing that the rules that Smalling's following as a footballer are of a higher standard than this mug who's running the field. So, he wouldn't start on Smalling in the street because he's blooming massive. But on a field, it's the same thing as when you wind up your teacher knowing they can't do anything. You wind them up because in their position they do something to you, they get fired. You do something, and you get detention or suspended or something like that. But it's got to stop. We've got to find some way to stop it. And like you say, we don't want to go back to the fences, of course.
No, and all I read about England nowadays is that everyone and their dog are carrying knives, and that's just the last thing you want, right? Is one of these clowns to have a few beers in him and have a knife in his pocket and something just to get completely out of hand.
Yeah, and it really just takes one man. And we've been going to football for decades now. And I'm sure you'll agree with me in terms of, how many times have you been searched going into the football?
Not many.
I could count them on both my hands.
Yeah.
And I always thought that, actually, going to Old Trafford, I thought you can actually just walk into areas of Old Trafford with no ticket whatsoever. You can get into the stadium without they do a sort of 2-second pat down, but it's they're touching you up more than anything, really.
Yeah, and I think that nothing has happened in the last few decades has allowed Heineken to start giving glass bottles out instead of the plastic bottles, as we saw with the first leg of the Champions League. And that's just the last thing you want a crazy fan to run on the pitch with, is a glass bottle, right?
Yeah, hopefully they'll do something about it. Hopefully it's just a little phase. I will say it wasn't just two, was it? There was an incident up in Scotland as well. There was, I believe, in the Hibs game.
Oh, you're right.
Where, again, a guy tried to attack. And the steward, I must say, did a blinding job. He was over the hoarding, and he reached over and bear hugged this guy, and he actually stopped real trouble ensuing. So normally stewards don't do a great job, but this one, fair play to him.
Didn't Neil Lennon get attacked by a fan as well a few months ago? Am I right in thinking?
Yeah. And a little funny tip that actually has nothing to do with United at all, but with the Grealish incident, you saw obviously Grealish score the winner and jumped over the hoardings and celebrated with the Villa fans. And when he was trying to climb back over, one of the Birmingham stewards gives him a kick from behind, and then you see him getting arrested as well.
Yeah, that was funny.
Absolute mayhem.
I thought it was really poetic justice for Grealish to score that goal. And I've never really been a fan of Jack Grealish, but I am more after yesterday. And he didn't let an incident like that go to his head, and he just carried on with his game and ended up winning in the end.
Yeah, he did. Fair play to him.
Absolutely.
Absolutely
And
fair play
I
to him.
will actually say that yesterday Chris Smalling was great as well in times. I thought that they had a real chance in the first half that Aubameyang he had him beaten by a yard, and Smalling managed to recuperate and come back. And you've never really look at Chris Smalling and think that speed is his forte, but he was good again yesterday.
Yeah, he was. He was. And to be fair, when you do have someone come in and threaten your space on the field, you do feel in a position of weakness. And he didn't let that affect him at all, which you've got to pay a bit of respect for too.
Completely.
So we move on to the FA Cup, buddy. We got to forget about this. We're United. It's the way we react. That's what Ollie said. We all have our dips in life. It's the way you bounce back from them. United, traditionally, we've been very, very good at bouncing back from things. We go to Wolves full of confidence after recent results. Are you happy that we're going to bounce back, go through to Wembley, semi-finals of the Cup?
100%, mate. Absolutely.
We got people coming back. We obviously Matic came back on Sunday too, so we've got Matic and Martial definitely back. I believe Herrera's possibility to come back. Mata too. I think I'm right in saying that Lingard's the only one who's still got a question mark over him.
Yeah, I think he may have hurt his hamstring a bit more than others in that Liverpool game, and I think that he's one player that his acceleration, his quickness is such a huge part of his game that he has the susceptibility of injuring his hamstring again. So I would give him the international break, and not see him again until the Watford game.
Would do the old Fergie trick and not play them the day before the international break and then say they're injured and then give them a nice 2 weeks to recover.
I think he is injured, right?
Brilliant stuff. So what do you reckon, Scott? We've been through a tricky time in terms of we've been forced into selecting sort of the same kind of lineups for a few games. We're going to have a few players back. I would like to see a few changes going on. What do you think in terms of a lineup for Sunday? Of course, we're going to see Romero in goal, do you think, for the Cup?
Yeah, I think so. I think if he was played at Arsenal in the last round of the FA Cup, I think he'd probably play in this round. And he was great. We were talking the other day how he hasn't conceded a goal at Old Trafford?
He
Unbelievable.
Hasn't. No, he still has never conceded a goal at Old Trafford. How crazy is that?
And he's never conceded a goal at the Molineux, right? So I'd play him there.
Yeah, I definitely see him start. What about centre backs? Would you change anything around?
You know what? I actually might. I think we've got Bailly, we've got Rojo's fully fit again now. I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't change it, but I would maybe give Bailly a game at the expense of Lindelof, and maybe even give Rojo a game. You never know.
I wouldn't be opposed to giving them both a whirl, to be honest with you. We have to get people in form for the run-in. That we're not going to be able to play the same two every week. It might be a good time. Like I say, Lindelof didn't have his best game against Arsenal, I didn't think. Smalling was good, but we've played a lot of minutes. Probably Ollie will go with keeping one of them, I would have thought, and maybe partnering with Bailly. We can always make a change at half time. But I'd like to see Rojo get some minutes again. I'm not sure his voice box is too well after Wednesday night. Did you see him roaring after we scored?
I did, yeah, I did.
Going absolutely mad. I loved that. Absolutely brilliant. I forgot what a wild child he was. And then what about at the back? Luke Shaw, would you keep him in? Might be a time to give him a rest, Play Delo on the left.
Maybe. I would have actually said put Delo on the right and have Ashley Young at left back. I think maybe Luke Shaw's showing a little bit of fatigue the last game.
Yeah, and of course it's tricky to predict. We don't know the injury situation quite yet. So it's only Monday, the 11th, after the Arsenal game. So we don't know exactly where we stand. But I guess we're intimating that there will be some changes. Matic probably keep his place. Might be time for Fred to have a little rest. Pogba obviously is fresh. He had a funny game, didn't he? Actually, Pogba. He seemed full of energy at times, but then at times he seemed a bit disjointed as well.
Yeah, I would say that's a fair assumption. He looked at times absolutely integral to our play, and then a little bit lost sometimes. I think we have to also say that it was absolutely tipping down at times, and it's tough for him to play his intricate little play when it is raining so hard.
Yeah, and I guess from my personal point of view, I was expecting such a big performance from Pogba after missing Wednesday that, I guess I'm judging him again by those high standards that he set. And like you say, that ball he did that led to Delo being released was absolutely amazing. And he had a few moments of magic, but he's still got more in his locker than that, I think, personally.
Similar to what we were saying about De Gea, right, is he sets such high standards for himself that when he's not out of this world and he sort of plays a little bit more human, then he doesn't look like he's having the best of games.
Yeah. And I'd certainly like to see Martial start at Molineux. I guess it
might be a bit early, I think, to start him in a game. I would actually maybe like to see Tahith Chong or Mason Greenwood start.
I thought Martial looked fine when he came on. I thought he looked sharp. I think Lukaku or Rashford or both need a rest. I'd certainly be surprised if Martial doesn't start. I think he's got a full week after the Arsenal game, and it's just about who's fit around him. I guess if Mata's back, then he might start on the right, and then you've got choice of Lukaku or Rashford to play through the middle. And of course, we can bring people off. I mean, I know that was always in the Fergie years. You know, we try and get the goals, get through, and then pull people off. You don't necessarily have to drop people in order to give them a rest.
Mm-hmm.
So, score predictions. I know you've had 1 out of 2 so far.
I was thinking that last time I did say it would be 2-0. I just didn't say it would be 2-0 to them. I think we're obviously going to win. I'd go maybe 2-1, 2-0. Let's say 2-1. Let's say 2-1.
I'm going 3-1 to Manchester United. I think we advance. We go through to the semi-finals of the Cup at Wembley, and we're back on track.
All right.
Fantastic. Thanks for listening again, Reds. Like and subscribe on iTunes. Follow us on Instagram at United100 Podcast. We'll be back next Monday after the Wolves game. Let's not forget how far we've come in the last 3 months, boys. We're heading back to the top with Ollie at the wheel. It's bye from me.
Bye from me.
And we'll see you next week. Take care, Reds. Bye-bye.